Welcome to another episode of Revenue Career Ladder, your go-to source for real career stories, practical advice, and actionable insight from revenue pros who've been there, done that, and are here to help you climb towards your dream job. So in this episode, I'm joined by Nazma Qurban, and we're going to be chatting about her journey from selling timeshares to CRO and now co-founder. Now, I'm quite interested in this one because it's a bit more of a SaaS vibe, and we haven't had a huge amount of SaaS in these conversations so far. So I think that would be really, really good. And certainly I would call it maybe SaaS pedigree in terms of your background and some of the companies you've worked for. But without further ado, how are you?
So good. I'm very happy to be here. So yeah, life is good.
No, that sounded sarcastic, but you're genuinely, yeah.
No, I genuinely am. It's very interesting you say that it's sarcastic because I think that I'm just naturally quite an optimistic person, and it can be quite sarcastic.
I'm sure we'll probably pick up on some of the optimistic vibes throughout your career. So we usually start these conversations going all the way back to your first ever job, which for you've got down as timeshares. So do you want to just explain what that is and how it came about?
It probably came about because back in the day, if you wanted to look for a job, you would open up your local newspaper and there would be a section of jobs to apply to. And so that's what I did. I applied for a job. I was 15 years old. And I ended up starting and working evenings. My phone is going off. Let me just turn this off. And I was working evenings. So, to my surprise, the very first day that I got into the office, we had a bit of training, and then we all sat down, and there's a woman, the manager, who's walking around. I'm not kidding you, a BT phone book, and she was tearing pages out and then just assigning them to everyone. And that was it. That was my first job, where I was calling people during their prime dinner time and pitching them the opportunity of attending a timeshare event.
And this was at age 15?
Yeah.
I can remember even probably at age 15, I hated making phone calls. My mum would force me to answer the phone, so I would just get used to answering the phone. But I was like, no, just text them or whatever it was back then. So 15 making cold calls, that must have been very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know any different. It was just, it's a job and you have to call people and they're at home. And yeah, I got a lot of abuse. It just goes back to I didn't know any different. And I thought, okay, right, this is just a job and this is what everyone else is doing. And then I just cracked on and persevered.
And what were your motivations for getting a job at that point? I only ask that because it's very, very different for everyone in terms of I wanted money to go out, I wanted money to buy clothes, or was it I just need to get into the world of work?
It was just it's a really difficult question to answer because I don't think, but perhaps it was okay. I wanted clothes, or just that I wanted to have a job. It would be cool to have a job and to have money.
Yeah, I only for me it was basically my mum saying, right, you're 14 now, go and get a job. So that was kind of the decision was kind of made for me. And then obviously once you start getting money, you understand the value of it, and then you kind of want a bit more of it, and you want to do a bit more on the side. So was that literally your first ever job, or did you have a paper round or something like that?
That was, I'd say, the first job which was in a structured environment. I would say, so we never had so I come from an ethnic minority background, and we don't do allowances. They don't exist. I mean, it was such a bizarre concept for me to even learn that there was such a thing as allowances. And so I think potentially, now that I'm thinking about it, when I got to the age of 14, 15, I wanted clothes, and you're going through puberty, and so you want to look pretty, and there was my parents wouldn't just buy me things, and so perhaps that was one of the reasons why. But I've never really thought too deeply into why. And because if I didn't who else would give it to me? Who else would buy me the things? It was just
it speaks to a level of work ethic in terms of I'm not going to get an allowance and I want stuff, so I have to go and work. And for I think perhaps more recent years, there's I think a certain expectation from the younger generation of being given things rather than earning it, and perhaps on the whole, the work ethic of old has kind of been lost a little bit.
I'll tell you something really interesting that I learned about myself the other day. So we have a very small team, and we were talking about jobs and all the different types of jobs that we've all done throughout, well, education, when you're in school, when you go to university. And I've always had a job. I have worked since the age of 15. I've never really gone without. And I mean, I've had some very, very interesting jobs. And I kid you not, I've just loved every single one of them. The only time that I didn't like working, ironically, was when it was my very first job after graduating. But prior to that, perhaps it was I'm going to have to work, and because potentially that there was a time limit, I knew that it was due for this period of time, and so I gamified it. I worked in Asda. That was also like one of my very first like stocking shelves, and I loved the job. I used to wake up so excited, like going to work and like just being the best shelf stacker and like taking like a lot of pride. And then also I met so many people because of course I had limited, and that was when I was around 16, 17 years old. And I remember meeting new people because I didn't when you're in school, you're limited with the friends that you make because they're the only ones that you have. And so you have sort of like a limited mindset. And so when you go into the working world, I met so many interesting people that were 3 years older than me, 4 years older, 10, 20 years older than me. And so I just loved meeting and talking to people. I actually ended up getting fired from Asda because I was talking too much. I mean, it's just such a ridiculous reason to get fired. But yeah, I just love the people I was working with. And I felt on reflection, all the roles, including, I know we're going off in a tangent because
this is exactly what this series is about. So
okay, so I'm going off in a tangent, but because this is also a job that I had, and I only thought about it the other day when I was speaking to my mum, and she was talking about how difficult it is because we're from a Pakistani background, and her nephews and her family have come over to this. They've studied here, and then it's been quite challenging for them to get roles. And she was talking about how difficult it was, and I was like, Mum, do you remember when I was at university and I came back one summer? I got a job as a waitress in a hotel chain. It was a really nice hotel chain in Windsor, and I used to get up at 5 a.m. to be ready for the 6 a.m. breakfast shift. I do that entire shift up until like just after lunchtime. I'd go home. I would then nap and rest up. And then I'd get ready for the 6 p.m. shift up until midnight. I was like, that was really hard. And so not that I'm saying that my cousins don't have a hard time, but I was just on reflection. I was like, I remember going home some days being so tired, my feet were hurting and my brain, I was finding it really difficult to go to sleep. And I just think to myself, I didn't need the money at the time. And I think it was just, you just have to work. It's just something that you do. Mm-hmm. But I love that also, like just getting up and I end up meeting like so many very interesting people from very different backgrounds. Again, I'm a big people person, and also taking pride in the work that I do.
Yeah, there's a couple of bits I want to pick up on. I love the gamification of the job. So if it's stocking shelves or stacking shelves, it's like, how many shelves can I stack in my 8 hours? Or how quickly can I do this one bank of shelves? Was that the sort of gamification you're talking about?
Yeah, and I'm very competitive, so it has to be better than everyone else's, right? And so just like taking it to another level. So that was
my first job was in a garden centre restaurant. So like Saturday and Sunday, it was like the old nanas come in for cake and coffee and roast dinners and stuff. And I always I gamify getting better at cutting a joint of beef. as in it was like, I want to get the maximum number of slices out of this beef, so it's the most efficient. And yeah, I like that. I like that. But no, I agree with you in terms of, I don't want to use the word woke, but it just feels as if there's a lot more complaining about having to work a certain number of hours or 2 jobs or 2 shifts. And I think my second proper job was Debenhams, and that was 12-hour shifts on a Saturday. And it was just, you just did it. It was like 8 till 8, and you had a couple of breaks during the day, and they wouldn't let you go a minute over your breaks or anything like that. But you just did it because you had a job at school, and then when you went to university, you had rich parents who gave you no allowance, or you worked at weekends so you could afford alcohol. It was like that. You just had to be done.
Yeah. And interestingly, I'm sure it was a bank holiday and you get paid double. You're like, yes, I'm definitely working on a Sunday or on a bank holiday. So
I worked every bank holiday. Okay, right. So you were cold calling with Timeshares at 15. You were getting a lot of, I'd imagine, angry people at 6 o'clock in the evening when they're just about to sit down and eat their dinner.
Yeah.
But you then decided that another role that might be good would be going into recruitment. Is that right?
So what had happened was just so that we get like this sequence of events like correct. That was the very first role. I probably was there for I don't know, like a month, I don't know, 6 weeks, and then it shut down as it does. I was born and brought up in Slough, so there's a lot of these sort of like call centers that pop up, and then you just get a bit of experience, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared. So and interesting,
and then it rebrands and opens a week later as another call center.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the office that I was in, because it's based in Slough, the office was actually filmed in the same building, and it was just like, one floor. Anyways, I digress. So after that, I had tons of jobs, right? I've like I said before, I worked as a waitress. I worked as in a phone store for many years. So you name it, I've just done every single job. And then after I graduated, so I studied law at university, the very first, let's call it professional job, was in recruitment.
And what was we've had quite a lot of recruitment that's come up in these conversations, and it's typically, I needed a job, and there were loads of recruitment jobs. Funnily enough, recruitment and sales, there tends to be just an endless list of recruitment jobs available at any one time. Was that the logic behind it, or did you actually think recruitment could be for me? I want to get into recruitment.
Okay, so I studied law at university, and as you can imagine, my parents were quite disappointed that I didn't want to pursue a career in law. And so it wasn't just their disappointment, to be honest. It was also the fact that I wanted to prove that I made the right decision to myself and to others, and all my friends were going on and pursuing their career in law. So I literally just took a step back. I put it probably into some search and Google, okay, what are the careers that are basically, because I was limited. I had studied law and there was no other experience that I had. I was limited with the types of opportunities that would give me fast progression, and that's what I was looking for. So I did tons of research around different career paths, and I mean, I even considered like going and studying medicine, just like because I was very open to like what is next. I knew law wasn't for me, and so I just kept coming back to sales, and all of the best CEOs or the world, in the world always had like this kind of sales background. And so for me, it also lent in very nicely with my experience, because I'd worked in call centers, I'd sold phones, and so it felt like, okay, right, sales is the right path. And I interviewed, and I'm not exaggerating, I was probably rejected 70 times before I got accepted to the first job that I went to. That I ended up joining, Progressive Recruitment, which was a really good recruitment company. But yeah, I applied to any sales job, and then finally someone took me on.
That's really, really interesting, actually. That's probably the most considered research-based decision to go into recruitment that we've come across, which is interesting that I think it speaks to a degree of aspirational aspirational thinking and work ethic in terms of, right, I want to progress, I want to, I don't know, earn more, be more successful, reach a certain level. What's the quickest way of doing it? And then you actually made a decision based on that. Whereas a lot of people kind of seem to fall into it, which is very, very interesting, actually. And what were some of the reasons why? Okay, I'm going to place a bet, or I'm going to make an assumption that the reason why you got rejected to a lot of them is that you were too aspirational, and they thought she might join, and then in 6 months' time move elsewhere for a better gig. We want someone who's going to be a lifer. Am I along the right lines?
No.
Oh, damn it.
It's really off. The reason why I was rejected was because I was fucking shit at interviewing, Jamie. I was awful.
Right, okay. At least you're honest.
I just, yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, I went through loads of interview processes, and it was a learning curve for me, because I think interviewing is also a skill. And so I hadn't quite nailed that skill, and it had to take me so many interviews and so much rejection to understand, get the feedback and keep persevering. Something interesting, because there may be a lot of people in the beginning of their journey that are going to be listening in. I remember having a conversation with a recruiter, and I said to her, because all my friends had then started getting jobs, like full-time jobs, to continue, and then working part-time. And this is very common when you leave university, because you need income. And so people just get into jobs and then they do part-time. And I asked, I'm like, what do you think I should do? Because, you know, when it comes to my job, because I was offered more hours, she's like, don't take it. This is a full-time job. Finding a job is full-time. And so I was very, again, intentional about finding a role. And the reason why, because again, I was like, okay, right, I've just graduated and I need to have a good salary. I think at the time it was 18K. That was really, really good, a very good salary. And so I just compare myself with everyone else around me. I was like, well, most people are on so I think the minimum wage at the time was 12K. I'm showing my age now. So it was it was a lot of money in comparison to other people that had that went down different route.
Yeah, I think we're a similar age, so I do remember that sort of 18, 19K was like a good, very good like entry sort of start point. What were what the first thing was that you said about the job hunting being a full-time job, and I've seen a lot of that recently, where people actually show how applying for a job is almost like sales in itself, doing cold outreach, doing emails, making sure you're connecting with as many stakeholders of the business as possible, like making sure your LinkedIn profile is a digital CV and things like that. There's a lot of tactics and strategy involved in finding jobs nowadays. So that's definitely interesting. What would you say if you were to give like a good piece of advice for the actual interview itself that you've learned over the course of your career, looking back, that you could have applied in those 70 other rejections?
I think writing out every single potential question that you're going to be asked and having just a good answer, go through it again and again and again. So anytime you ask a question, that's it.
I used to do that with my mum. But we didn't have ChatGPT at the time, because that would be good. Of like, give me 25 example questions for this job title. It would be brilliant on ChatGPT now, but it was just a case of, Mum, can you ask me some questions you think someone might ask in this interview? And yeah, but she was a teacher, so she kind of like, that was basically her area. Okay, then. So you went into recruitment consultant, a company called Progressive Recruitment. What did you just go in as a I don't know what is it. Literally recruitment consultant. That's the first job title, isn't it? On the recruitment hierarchy.
Yeah. I mean, different companies work differently. Some make you start as a resourcer, which is basically just candidate acquisition. Whereas this was a 360 role where I was finding new business, and then I was acquiring the candidates for the role.
And how long were you in recruitment?
For quite some time, so maybe like 2 years. Yeah,
and that's for recruitment. That's a good stint. Like it's typically within the first 3 months, if you really hate it, you quit, and then in the first 9 months, if you don't bill, you quit. So 2 years is a good stint in recruitment.
Yeah, I was Jamie. I was not good. I was not good. I was not good. Yeah, I have no idea how I just made it like that far. I really didn't enjoy it. There was zero.
I'm loving the honesty. So you're shit at interviewing, and then you were shit at recruitment. So why were you shit at recruitment?
I think perhaps at that time, perhaps it was my age. I'm not really good with like emotionally like regulating myself, and so knowing you have your client, which is a person who has emotions, who can change, decisions. They make certain decisions. Then you also have candidates who also can be very unstable. And so almost your products are two things, and then you're spinning those two things around. And I just couldn't deal with that. And it was a roller coaster. And when I was thinking, okay, right, what do I do after this? For me, when I was thinking about tech, and it was coming up, and I was like, okay, right, maybe I should explore this. It's like, well, my product doesn't change. So your candidates they change your mind all the time, right? And they have lots of influences, whereas the only thing that I need to really be able to like control is like one thing, and that is my client. And so that was I think it was I found it really, really challenging to manage both.
Yeah, no, I one of my previous partners was in recruitment, and the volatility and the roller coaster of emotions of like having a good couple of weeks placing candidates, and then 5 months out of the 6 months of their notice period, they decide the job's not for them, they drop out, and you don't get your commission, and it's like, and that's another like hit of just bad I don't know, into like making you feel shit about the job. And it was very, very up and down. And like you said, you're selling people, professionals as people, but also the business, and it's very, very subjective in terms of, oh no, we've actually changed the role slightly, we're actually going to drop the budget of the role, oh, and the roles, we're no longer placing the role. And that's like, that happened all too often with clients. Okay, did you, in those 2 years, you must have learned something. Even if you were terrible at it, you must have learned something.
I've learned so much. I mean, I wouldn't be the person that I am. I mean, every single role in my life has, like, honestly, even from, I mean, yeah, there's lots of examples I could give you, but I think the fundamentals of recruit. I mean, it was like the best entry role for me. To put things in perspective, and I think the SDRs have it really easy these days, and I'm quite intense anyway. And I think a lot of my intensity actually came from those early days where it was a very, very much a volume game. So I this is no exaggeration. We'd have a computer, and it was not software on the cloud, right? So it was like on premise, and we'd have like numbers to call through, and I would dial the number and wait to be connected. If I'm not connected, I'd put the phone down, and then I'd lift it up immediately after, and then dial the next number. And that was it. And so if I did have a conversation, I was writing the notes out as I was having the conversation. And, you'd have these like competitive, like these boards, and, by lunchtime, how many dials you made. I mean, there were times I'd made 600, 300 dials by lunchtime. I mean, it's not out of the realms of possibility if you're not getting connections, right? So I think volume, I learned how to be very intense. Volume, I think a lot of my intensity comes from that period of time, for sure.
Yeah, it's very, very almost cold-blooded, but the margins are fairly tight in recruitment, aren't they? So it is a volume play. Unless you're in like fairly bespoke C-suite or very niche industries, the margins are fairly low, aren't they?
Well, I would say that with the volume, it played out later on when I became an SDR, because I did way more volume than anybody else, because it was like I was just used to doing this. So for me, it was a walk in the park when it comes to doing the activity, because I'd already built that muscle.
Yeah, I have heard it quite a few times where people say like recruitment isn't necessarily something that most people will stick at long term, but in terms of like doing it for a year or two and how much you learn going through the stress and the rejection and just the volume and hitting the numbers and the dials, it's really, really good for just cutting your teeth and building some foundations. So that's probably a good takeaway of if you're struggling to think of what you want to do next, why not just go into something like recruitment or sales and just start working? Because you're going to learn something even if you hate it and you're shit at it. Okay, then. So you did that for 2 years. What was the final straw? Like, why did you, after 2 years, go, right there, I've had enough of this?
I mean, I was just like deeply unhappy, and I was not. I don't like the feeling of not being good at something, right?
I despise it. I don't do anything I'm not good at. I avoid it like the plague.
You do. Like bowling, don't do bowling. Like my nephews are like, oh, let's go. I know.
I'm sick at bowling. So whenever someone's like, "Do you want to go bowling?" I'm like, "Yes, absolutely." Yeah. 7 strikes incoming. But no, golf. I can't do golf. I tried it. Can't do it. We'll sold everything. We'll never play it again.
And now you say, "Oh, I just don't like it," but it's only because you shit at it.
Yes, it's not good for my joints. It wasn't. Yeah. In reality, I'm just really, really bad at it. Okay, so you've decided you had enough, and you went into sales, didn't you? You thought, right, tech. I want to get into. Seems like it's going to be a booming industry, which is a good eye to have in terms of picking up on the fact that industry looked like it was growing.
I know. Good for me.
Finally, we're at a point where you did something right rather than being shit at it.
Yeah, finally. So yeah, I saw that it was booming and started interview process, looking for an AE role because I'm a closer, so of course I'm going to get a role.
And how did you pick the company? I'm assuming if you did research,
about 20 times got rejected, and the reason why I got rejected was because they were all AE roles, and this was actually a very pivotal moment in my career because it was I feel like it was a beginning really for me. That at that point when I got rejected, I thought to myself, okay, right, like I've read this book, and actually the book is nothing to do with work, but I implemented it, and the whole premise is that we're not the exception with the rule, and we have to follow the rule. And for me, I was so fixated at becoming an AE because why shouldn't I? Why wouldn't I? I've got the experience, and lots of people were just like, younger than me that were AEs, so it didn't really make sense that. And because I'd then got so many rejections, I also understood through the interview process that the rule is that you have to start off as an SDR in tech. And so, yeah, I swallowed my pride and just started my first job as an SDR at the age of 27. So,
that is in terms of the normal entry point to an SDR role. That would be to your point. That is later in life, let's say. Yeah. I can imagine it was challenging. Some of those SDRs or AEs, the AEs were probably 24, 25, some of them?
23, 24.
But they had probably been in sales since they were 21, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you went in as an SDR, a company called Genie Connect, which was later acquired. But what was the product?
It was a mobile engagement app. So you know how you go to events, and now we have mobile apps, the application that you can download, and you can interact, and you can network with people. So they were one of the very first to build an application like that.
Cool. Now, selling anything to do with events can be difficult and quite a bad rep for selling in event-related stuff, isn't it? Is that true?
Didn't know, didn't care. They wanted to bring me on as SDR. It was in tech. I was like, great. And then they paid me quite a good salary. I think, it was a good base salary at the time. So I just, indifferent. I was like, great.
Okay, so paint a picture for us. How long were you there?
Before it was acquired, probably about a year. But I think I've got to tell you, it's so fundamental, like that changed my life. That job did. So I walked into that role, and it was a very small organization. There were about 30 people, and I was part of like the new cohort. There was another guy who was also like an SDR, and I just like I said before, late bloomer. So I felt like failure is not an option. I'm going to give it 100%. And I did. Every single day, I gave it 100%. One of the very first days that we did cold calling, and this is, I love retelling the story, because the very, very first, one of the very first few days, maybe it was a Thursday, and it was about 5 o'clock, and the guy who was booking a meeting, like who was an SDR, he'd actually been SDR for like maybe 6 months. So I was the new one. I was the only like new SDR. He then booked a meeting at 5 p.m. on that Thursday, and he put his name on the board, and then he was very happy, and my insides were like eating me up. I was like crumbling inside. I was like, what do I do? And then there was a director who was sitting next to me. I mean, he's a director. He's like a senior AE. I'd call him like an enterprise senior AE. And I said to him, well, you said that you have US data. You have US data. Like, can I start calling? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I started calling. And it got like 6:30. I booked my first meeting. And then he was just like, high five, great. Then everyone started leaving the office, and I stayed. And then I booked another meeting, and then I just continued. I continued working, and then I booked 3 meetings the next day. I mean, and the next day I went in, and so the guy walks in, and he was like really happy. And I'm not that person because I always sound like a really like a bitter person, but I was a bit smug when he was just like, yeah, I booked a meeting, and then he's like, yeah, but that's what you also booked a meeting, didn't you, before I left? And then I didn't say anything because you let the numbers make the noise for you. And they looked around. They're like, how did that happen? I'm like, yeah, I took 3 meetings. And yeah, that was the beginning of that journey. And it just showed like you push through, you do the extra work. What if I didn't ask for the extra data? What if I decided that 5:30 was my time for me to go home? I wouldn't have, first of all, booked those 3 meetings. I wouldn't have got the confidence I needed, and I wouldn't have understood the value of you keep going. Every no is closer to a yes. Every no is closer to a yes. And so, interestingly, then with that attitude, a month in, the CEO calls me. Right, it's a small business. It's 7 p.m. And one thing that I would say. And I was never allowed to say this to my team. And I still wouldn't say this to my team because I think it's really unfair. But something that I've said to like my nephews or people that like come to mentor me. One of the things, as I said, in all roles, I've learned something. There was a manager that I was working in a retail store, and they had maybe like 4 branches. And I got on with the manager quite well. And he said to me that if you want to progress, and if you want to like build life, and he actually gave me the best book recommendation of how to, it's called How to Win Friends, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But he also said, I'm not going to give it to you, you have to go and buy it, because there's very different value. So that was one gift he gave to me. The other gift that he gave to me was helping me understand the value of just being present. And when I mean present, he said, oh, by the way, if you wanted to become a supervisor, he was just giving me all these nuggets. He's like, well, if you're the first one in and you're the last one out, and there is an emergency, who is the manager going to look to? Like, be that reliable person. And there was value in that. So I actually took that sort of approach and took it very seriously into the SaaS world. And I'd make it my mission. I was a teacher's bit. My sisters would tell you I was a teacher, like annoying teacher's pet at school, like so annoying, punchable face. Even I would admit, like really annoying. And so, yeah, I'd make it my mission because I knew the CEO would get in at 7. I'm like, I have to get, and my mission, I'd be like, I need to make sure that I'm there before him, and then like be the last one to leave. And what that gave me fundamentally was, first of all, having conversations that I wouldn't necessarily ordinarily be exposed to, because the leaders come in before and after, and they might just want to go in because they want your head down. But first of all, they see you working, and you're not doing it just so that, just for the visibility, but also there were so many occasions where I was on a call. I'm gonna go off. I'm gonna go off in the tangent.
No, this is perfect.
This is really it's really fundamental actually. So I remember it was around like 7 p.m. and I'd call this woman there's so many lessons in this little story, like so many lessons. So I had been, I persevered with this one woman. Every time I called her, she was like, "Oh, I'm really busy. Can you call me back?" I'm like, "When do you want me to call you back?" And then I'd put the time in the diary. And so, and I'm an SDR, so I don't really know the product very well, right? I finally got through to her. No, I didn't finally get through to her, that's a lie, because she kept telling me, she kept pushing back. And she was like, "Hey, right, what is it?" And I was like, "I just want to explain to you, like, the reason for my call, and then you can decide, like, whether we should continue talking." And then I explained to her the reason I call and what we do, and she was like, "The reason why I've been so busy is because I've literally been looking for this. Can you guys do X, Y, Z?" I didn't know anything about the tech, right? The detail. And as I was trying to just, I guess when you're young and you're naive, you're just trying to, I don't know, what is the right word to use? You know, when you're just, I was just waffling and not really, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just like saying things for the sake of saying things. So the CEO wasn't too far, so he just came over, he spoke, and he explained exactly what we were able to do, because they had different tracks, speaking events. We closed that deal in the next 24 hours, right? So first of all, I had great learnings from like the CEO, because he was explaining to me things that I didn't have exposure to because I had limited, but I wouldn't have been able to get that. Second of all, he direct impact on revenue, and also that helped like build that relationship, right? And even if it wasn't like a relationship, it was more like, oh, so a bit more conversation, because at the end of the day, even as leaders, you're busy. So that was the one example of like why it's really important actually to show up, be first one in, last one out. That's always been, I think it's been fundamental, like truly fundamental. And my nephew, who got into SaaS sales, I gave him the same advice. And I was like, "Trust me, like, believe me, how this is going to impact." And yeah, there was no question about it, like, because you're the first one in, right? Anyway, so you think about that kind of approach, right? And so I'm this like young girl, SDRing, like doing the best job that I can. And, he then calls me into the office, the CEO, at 7 p.m. on a Friday. And he was like, "You're really good." I was like, "Thanks." Obviously I wasn't as confident. I was very like, "Oh." He's like, "Yeah, you're really good. We have a guy in the US, because I had a US arm. He's in Chicago. He's based in Chicago. She's not very good. And I think that, I think you'd be really good at training him." And I was like, "Oh yeah, of course, I'd be more than happy to." And he's like, and I think because everyone knows about your personal life, they knew that I didn't have basically anything like holding me down, right? And so he said to me, "Oh, well, how do you feel about not doing it remote, but actually going to Chicago?" I was like, "Yeah, that'd be amazing." He's like, "How do you feel about staying for 2 months?" And then they basically got me an Airbnb, and I basically, that Sunday I flew out, and it was just the most magical experience of my life. And I always look back at that specific time period, because, I think that's what happens when you give like all your energy, like magic just happens. So yeah, that's.
Do you know, I love it when I can just sit back for 10 minutes and not have to say anything. So that was full of insights, advice. I think that some of the highlights would say, so just hard work, just work ethic, intensity. I think the intensity delivered in the right way can definitely pay off. Openness to learn, as in just take on feedback from the CEO, like sitting right next to you. And I can definitely relate to the like teacher's pet thing. I can remember back at school, like I would write something and then I would seek validation. I'd be like, "Is this right?" And then when it was, "Yes, that's right," I was like, "Yes, right, continue." But no, that's very, very. It sounded like there was a lot of penny drop moments in that period, in terms of, wow, this is enjoyable. I'm good at this. If I put work in, I will get the results. Was that the case? Was this like that start point of a proper career of sorts?
Yeah, 100%. And I think one thing that I would add, though, I think a lot of people are now getting their head around this, but I've always been a very big believer in like projecting. And so some people call it manifesting. Some people call it, I don't know, manifesting, like attracting these things. But I I used to literally, I still have my journal. I used to write down the amount of meetings that I'm going to be booking in like future tense. And I would say, I would, and I really deeply, I had a deep belief at that point, and that was a shift. And so if there was any difference, I wonder like what the difference would have been if I had that same approach and that same attitude and energy, in other in roles previous to that. But I really felt that, maybe there was a bit of like pressure on me because like I said, I was a late bloomer. So that, it's do or die. So
It's quite a, obviously we have another series that focuses on Stoic philosophy and how that applies to sales, but it's quite a Stoic way of thinking of that manifestation of I will achieve this. I know I can because I've got the results to show that I'm on the trajectory. It will happen if I continue doing this.
Yeah.
So that's also a very, very good piece of advice. Whether you journal in the morning, in the evening, like those 5-minute journals, 6-minute journals, whatever they're called, gratitude and things you've learned. It's always good to have this like concrete belief or expectation in yourself of where you can get based on, no, I am good enough to get that job. It sounds like it was an amazing year in terms of you crammed a lot into it. So why did you decide that a year was enough?
I didn't decide that a year was enough. So I was an SDR. I was on a journey to becoming an AE. The company then got acquired. And so I was an AE in a larger organization. And I just didn't enjoy it. It was, I guess what I learned was that I worked really well in smaller businesses. I love attention. So if I do a good job, to be recognized for it, and to see like the fruits of the direct impact that I'm making. And when all those things were taken from me, and I mean, just the company completely. I mean, it was a completely different company. I went from working in Maidenhead to then moving to London, and I wasn't. I hate using the word motivated, but I guess I didn't care as much. I don't know.
No, but they say as managers you need to understand the internal motivators for people, and if one of your internal motivators is you need to see the value of what you're delivering and then get positive haptic feedback back, then working in a company with 1,000, 2,000 headcount, you just don't get it. And I've worked for 34,000 headcount, 10,000 headcount, 40 headcount, and I love the startup scale up. I don't think I'll go above scale up again because you, like you said, you're a no name. You're just a face where the senior leaders don't necessarily know who you are, and it's quite nice that everyone in the business knows who everyone is. Like, oh, you're in marketing, you do content, rather than just, are you in marketing? I don't know. Have we met before?
Yeah.
Like, it's just not the same. So I get it. Okay, so you learned loads. You knew what you were good at. You knew what you enjoyed. I take it you want, for your next role, you were trying to find just a similar vibe to that, but bigger and better, or?
Yeah, well, this is when it gets even more juicier. So the company got acquired, right? And because it's a small organization, you had like the CEO, who was a serial entrepreneur. He made a lot of money. So, he was already a millionaire, but he made a lot of money. Then there's a COO who I used to report to. Amazing guy. As soon as like the sale happened, everyone went out and it's like, oh, you're a millionaire now. I was like, wow. And all these people at the top. And I was like, well, they work hard, so they're doing the job anyway, but they have equity. So I learned that. That was like very fundamental to my journey. I was like, I want that. I want to be. There was another guy in the company who'd started right in the beginning, and I was like, well, I'll have the career opportunities. Like if I want the progression, I'll get it if I start like right in the beginning, right? Very intentional. I was like, right, that's what I need, because I know that's how I'm going to be. Yeah, potentially at that time it was like, okay, maybe that's what's going to make me rich. I want to be a millionaire. That'd be cool. And so I then started looking for roles, and you won't see this on my profile, but there was a gap. And I started looking for roles specifically in startups. And so I was talking to recruitment consultants, and there were all these like tech startups that were like starting out, but I would be maybe like the 10th salesperson. And I don't know, and this is what I learned with the whole like stoic stuff. It's like you have to be very intentional, and you have lots of temptations that come your way. But if you have real like true belief, you focus on the path and you keep persevering because that's the right path for you. And so although I had all these, shiny opportunities, I knew that it had to be something that was way more early on. And then I met James Islay, who CEO of Cognism. Now, at the time when I met him, they didn't even have a customer. So when I met him, there wasn't a customer. He'd already invested quite a lot of his money, and he was, I don't know, like just tinkering with the idea of like bringing someone that sells in if he got the funding. Anyway, it was when I met him, I was like, this is the one, this is the opportunity, because he's a CEO. I'd be the only person working. Oh, there was a CTO, and I would be like the person who looks after like sales. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like very excited about the prospect that this is it, this is the opportunity. But the role wasn't quite ready to go live then. And so I had a dilemma, which was, okay, I have all these other opportunities, and I don't want to take a role and then drop it after a few months because this opportunity becomes live. So what do I do? And I was just like, Nazma, manifest. Like, it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. And it did. I ended up doing some consulting for somebody who only has like AE experience and SDR experience to do consulting. It's just like, that just does not happen very often. And so there was a company, and they just had like a short project. So I did that, and I was, James, even today, he always makes this joke. He's like, Nazma, I've never been pursued by a woman as hard as I've been pursued by you, because I was like really relentless. I like drop him a note like every week. What's going on? Any update? What's going on? Any update? And after months, probably like 6 months, we went live. And then I started the role in January 2017, I think.
How did you meet James?
A very unsexy story. We all said, okay, we should come up with a better story, but it was just through a recruiter. So he went to an event, and the recruiter's a really good friend. And James was just, there talking about his tech startup. And Chris recruiter was like, oh, this is interesting. Maybe I can place. And then, he ended up placing me eventually.
Now, for those who don't know who James is, anyone in SaaS will know, but for those who don't, company, talk to us about the company, the product, and then we'll dive into the juicy stuff, as you called it.
Well, I think maybe that was a anticlimax there, because I thought the juicy stuff was that I like pursued him for so long. And actually what had happened was, he said to me, first of all, I think it's really important for people to know this, that I took a huge salary cut, like a huge salary. And I'm actually not embarrassed of like saying it, but I was on 40K and like a base as like head of sales in a new role, right? That's like, it was very, very low in comparatively. And he actually did interview somebody else, and he only literally a year later did he tell me this. He hired the guy, and basically James tried to get me down to 35, and I was like, no, it's got to be 40, take it or leave it. And then he hired the guy. The guy didn't show up. The guy didn't show up for work. And so I think maybe James didn't tell me, because he was just like, oh yeah, I did go down that route, but it was not a good idea. But he later on told me that. Cognism, B2B contact data provider. By the time when I started, there was one customer, 2K in ARR. And actually what happened was, in the process, very early stages, we spoke to the market and doing loads of demos and calls, basically evolved the product as it went. What the product we started off with was very, very different to the product that we ended up with. Now Cognism is like worth like $500 million. They have like thousands of employees, and yeah, one of the fastest growing companies in the UK. I'm very, very, very proud to have been part of that journey early on.
Yeah, I think, as I said, most people will probably be familiar with Cognism or the story of Cognism. When you said you went in as like head of BD, which you transparently put brackets glorified AE, so it was kind of first sales person. So you built out that function.
Yeah, I was an SDR and an AE. I kid you not. I need to stop saying that. I keep saying that's my word. You only have your filler word. I kid you not. Stop. That's my word. I'd start working 7 a.m. Europe, and then 3 o'clock I'd switch over to the US, East Coast, then West Coast. And I did that. I was working 17, 18 hours a day, every single day for the first year, like unquestionably, like I was doing that. And actually, that was really good because what we learned was, interestingly, I thought the US was going to be the market. Like that was my hypothesis. But what we learned was actually UK was prime, because UK were in the very, very beginning of like tech and sales enabled tech, which the US had already adopted. So yeah.
And obviously, I'd imagine at that point there were big, Zoom, the likes of Zoom Info at that point, in competing with.
Zoom Info didn't exist, and we were, but you're right, there was Discover All, but that wasn't really too much of an issue. It was just an easier sell, and also those companies, you'd have your standard. And people will not remember this, but when we started, because everyone's like, oh yeah, but what was it like with all these competitors? There were no competitors in the UK. There was just us, and then the status quo, which was outsourced teams or like having SDRs, like interns, finding contact details for you. That was it. And so it was a huge education piece around like the UK market, which yeah, not a lot of people know. But yeah.
Yeah, I was, because they say this on Dragon's Den all the time, of it cost millions to educate people on your new way of doing business, your new product. But then on the flip side, you said there were no competitors. So what was that like? Was it a hard sell because of the lack of education, or was it easy because there was just no competitors?
I think it's all like relative. No, it was hard. Obviously, it was hard. No, because it depends, right, on like which sector we were talking to. If it was a tech company, like a large tech company, then they were familiar with data providers. But if it was like a smaller business, and we started off at the lower end, which was a really smart thing to do. Obviously, we had like a lower ACV, but we were trying to basically, penetrate the SMB mid market to begin with, and then later on enterprise. And so there weren't that many competitors. No.
Now, those who might be familiar with your, I guess, your history at Cognism in terms of like progression, there was a lot of progression in the time there. Was it around 5 years you were there?
No. Less than 5 years, 3 years.
3 years. So I mean, okay, so the rate of progression is even more impressive then. So talk to us about the 3 years just in chunks.
How much time do we have? Like, literally.
Are you going to say, I kid you not?
No, I won't say that. When I always said I learned more in the first year of Cognism than I did the entirety of like the last 10 years, like prior to that. So it was a very steep learning curve for me. I just had to show up for myself. I had to show up for others in a way that I hadn't done before. And it just, brought the best out of me, I feel, because there's like, again, failure was an option. There was, so if I'm being completely transparent, there's like two different sides to me. There's this like, there's this, teacher's pet, loves to work hard. And, when I'm in it, I'm just like 100%. But there's also this like wild side to me. Like I love having fun. I love just being like reckless, like a bit. And so, when I studied my GCSEs, I, as every teenager, that's like, I was, having problems at home. And so despite my parents who really wanted me to like study and have, you know, a great education, I decided to literally just write my name on the exam papers and just walk out. I did not care. So I left school like no GCSEs. And I was a rebel. And then when I was at uni, I mean, I literally didn't go to any lecture or any seminar in the first year. And the second, so I have this like two different, like almost like not personality traits, but like different kind of sides to me. And when I was at uni, I think that most people probably were like, is she gonna make it? Just because of the way that I used to show up for myself, right? I mean, not going to your like seminar. I mean, I still came away with a law degree, but I just wasn't as like studious as the others, and that's just the truth. And then in recruitment, because I wasn't really good at it, I didn't feel really good about my performance and how I was perceived. And perception is, well, clearly it was important for me. And then after that, after I went through the SDR and then the company was acquired, there was lots of people that I worked with that never worked with me before, and I didn't bring in that same energy. So they were probably thinking, "Oh, what she doing?" Because I just didn't care, right? And I think that when I then entered Cognism, I was like, Nazma, like, this is a step up, because I had all these kind of like, these perceptions that I wanted to like not overcome, but just I wanted to be the person that I know that I could be. And so that's why I just gave it 100% and just focused on, and also like head of sales. I mean, I did not know how to basically create a bloody report in like Salesforce, nor have I ever managed anybody in my entire life. And so if you think about putting something on your LinkedIn, it's like head of sales, I can imagine how many people's eyes were like rolling. And so, which they rightly should have. And so I think that definitely, motivated me to just like, you've got to make it work, because the opposite would be embarrassing. And
The self-destructive rebellious streak, I think there's data to show that people who have high levels of intelligence and IQ, if they're not professionally stimulated, they look to rebel against the lack of like professional stimulation. So would you say, because it sounds like once you were in that SDR role and you were like, wow, I'm good at this, look at the results, I get more out than I'm putting in if I put enough in. Would you say that as long as you're motivated, creatively stimulated, challenged, you don't want to rebel? Or do you always have that like,
no, then I don't.
or is it when you get distracted, you're like, I'm not focused, let's rebel, that would be fun?
Yeah, but it's not even like a thought. It's just like this free spirit that I have. And actually, one thing that I found really interesting, just like thinking back to, you know, I always say this, the thing that I loved about my time at Cognism, and actually even when I think back to in the SDR role, is I could just completely be authentically myself, completely. And so, you know, you have this kind of ideal of what it means to be successful. When you're in recruitment, like you wear your suit and everyone's very polished and like you just behave in a certain way. And we all know, you know, recruiters are a bit wild as well, a bit too wild. But in general, you know, there's this persona of somebody who is in leadership that behaves or acts a certain way, and you have to be completely polished when it comes to your presentations, the way that you carry yourself. And I remember like James just, he didn't like hide his mistakes, which was one of the very first like that was like the most amazing thing, because I'd never had a manager who was just like, oh, not that he'd make mistakes, but you know, something as small as I don't know, I can't really like give an example, like if he was like running late and or like a presentation and something was missing, it was just like, it was okay. And I think that it made me feel very much like I could just be completely myself. And so I believe that you need to bring all yourself to work, right? Not like a part of it, like all yourself. And so having a place where you're encouraged to be yourself, really important.
So in the I like the leading by example thing of not expecting others to behave in a different way that you behave yourself, like hypocritical, whatever you want to call it. Of if you're late, it's like, look, gotta be honest, I slept through my alarm, rather than saying, oh, you know, the traffic was awful, it's not my fault. You just own it and you just set that standard. I really like that. So back to sort of the career trajectory or whatever we want to call it. You went in as head of BD, which was a glorified AE, as you put it. You then went up to VP of sales and then eventually CRO. So talk to us about in the role changing in terms of like you went in as a glorified AE, and then how did that change when you were VP of sales? What were you managing? What was the team size? What did it look like?
Yeah, I get within 9 months I was less than that I was managing. I'd hired 2 SDRs, and the way that I built the engine was that we would have like certain capacity. And so when I had the 2 SDRs, they were working really hard filling my diary. When I was at capacity, then I'd give them some of my opportunities, and then I'd back hire. And that's how I built the team organically. And so we had revenue targets, and I did not miss a target, not even 1 month, except for March 2020. So there was a lot of capacity planning and just structure to just make sure that I was able to get to where I needed. I think that, James is also, sometimes you need people to see things in you that you don't see in yourself. So for me, I was like, oh wow, this is so amazing. I definitely would have maybe wanted to go down the VP, not down, but to progress. But I don't know, perhaps it was just the company and how we were growing. I felt like anything is possible. Like, if that's what I want, like, why can't I? I wasn't looking at time. I was like, what do I need to do? Tell me exactly what I need to do, who I need to be in order to become a VP. So we laid out, pen and paper, signed, sealed. And I was like, right, that's it. And then I was just like laser focused on what I needed to do in order to get to the VP. And so I was already managing people, but I still had my own quota. So when I became a VP of sales, I did not have any quota. And then it was just entirely the team. So that was the kind of like the change. And then the responsibilities. I mean, I was working. I think the mistake that a lot of people do is they just focus on the performance, and they focus on, okay, I need to hit these numbers. You have to think about the person that you need to become in order to have that role and to be successful. And I think I was pretty good at that I understood like where my weaknesses were, and then I was walking in every day like projecting the person that I wanted to be. And so I've always had this like infinity with like self-development books, even like if I go into like, I just gravitate towards that section. I've spent summers in the self-help like section. So I'm always thinking about how to improve myself. And I think that thinking about the person that I needed to be and projecting that in my day-to-day as if that's already happened really helped me. And of course, like the work is going to get done anyway, right? So
there's a couple of bits to highlight there. So I think you were talking about the change of having a quota and then not having a quota. I feel like that would have been quite a tough change for you, because having a quota is that sort of that thing that's hanging above your head that keeps you motivated. I've got this number to hit. So was that difficult in not? I know you're responsible for the overall number of the team, but not having a quota on your head, was that a difficult change for you?
No, because I still had a quota. It just wasn't an individual. I didn't need to do it. I wasn't like managing deals. That was the only change. If anything, it made my life easier, because I could just focus on really elevating the team and like just focus on like improving them. So the quota always was there.
And then the self-awareness is always good. I think self-awareness, I think, gets more important the older you get, or at least the older you get, the more aware of self-awareness you are. And I think understanding your weaknesses, quite a few people are afraid of weaknesses. Into like I know I just said that I don't play golf anymore because I'm terrible at it, and that is a weakness. But I think people are afraid of admitting the gaps that they've got in themselves, whereas other people will hone in on those and just be like, no, that's literally, that's all I'm going to think about for the next a year, is just doubling down on that and getting better. How does that work for you in terms of, do you set like annual goals, like yearly goals?
No, I'm not.
Or is it just a dogged, like, I want to be better?
So I do have a process, and my process is very unique to me. And And I've been doing this for many, many years. So I don't think about like 6 months or 12 months in advance. I look at the next 3 months. So I literally did this like during my journey from VP to CRO. So it's a nice segue into that. So there were things that I did not know. I'm not a marketer, I'm a salesperson, but as a CRO, I have to look after marketing. So there's a lot of things I need to learn and I need to understand about marketing. And also I think it was because I just like climbed the ladder so quickly and I was an exec. There was so many things that I just did not know that I needed to learn. And so what I tend to do, and I still do this now, is I'll list out all of the things that are my gaps. And then I would write a statement. I have my friends like roll their eyes at me, and even like my teams, but I really don't give a shit because it's work. So I then write a statement which is the opposite. So for example, one of the challenges that I had was I wanted to be really approachable, and I love that fact that I was approachable, but actually that was actually doing me a disservice. So I was like, okay, what is the opposite to that? It's like firm and fair. That's what I want to do. And so then I'd write a statement about myself in the third person. And so as an example, it would be like, Nazma Qurban is an award-winning CRO. She is reliable, dependable. And then I describe myself, and then I would and anything that I'm, for example, if somebody isn't very confident, then I would, talk about situation that I would, as if it's already happened, right? And so that's literally what I do, and I still do that today. And I think it really helps me put myself into a space where that exists, and helps me embody it in day to day, because it's real when it's almost like in front of you, like in words. And
yeah, you spoke about positive manifestation, and there's the old like saying something over and over and over again in the mirror, or speaking to yourself in the mirror in the morning. Like that's like an old version of doing it. You're just writing it down. And there is, I think Stephen Bartlett has spoken with people who say that when you write something down, it becomes more tangible, more real. Like there's a piece of paper in existence in the world is a statement. Like you've written it down, you've made a statement. Did you is that a post-it note? Is it a book? Do you stick it somewhere? Is it on your
I have
wall?
our entire deck. And all I would say is, anyone that gives a shit for this, even like James Islay, who's like one of the successful people that I know, he has his own version, he does it as well. So, I think it's really important, because like as we're going, we're always thinking about how we grow, how we evolve, what type of person that we want to be. And it genuinely helps, because it drives action, right? So it's not like, oh, I'm going to do this. It drives action because you see that's what you need to do, and then you just show up every day, and it's just part of like and it's not just like writing it out and letting it go. I do like my gratitude journaling in the morning, and then I'll just like have a look at it, and
Do you know what that would if you said you've got a deck of them, that would make a very good book. Like there's loads of those style of books where people publish like their memoirs or their journals. Like what was it? Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights is him looking back at his journals. Like if you have a deck of those manifestations or those statements of where you want to be,
I mean, that could be fine. I do, yeah.
Yeah, that would be a really good book. So there's an idea for you. That one's free, but I want 5% of all royalties. Okay, so give us some of your favorite or biggest wins, like the big sort of things you look back and you're like, I'm super proud of that during that particular time.
So I used to have this thing that when I'd interview somebody and I'd really like them and I wanted to make an offer to them and they had to accept, obviously, I'd be like, I couldn't imagine a world if I really liked somebody and they wouldn't. That would really upset me. And when people used to come in for an interview and I really liked them, I would just say to them, like, if you take this job, I'm going to change your life. Like, I will change your life. And I really meant it. And I think it was such a good thing for me to project, because first of all, I did. And what I mean by change people's lives, like there was every single person that joined the team as an SDR. My objective was to get them to AE and make 6 figures within the first year. And I did that time and time and time and time again. So I'm very, very proud of that. I came from this sales, like recruitment, especially, they're very like tight with their money. And then I work for companies that have been very generous. And so I wanted to make sure that the organization that I build, the sales organization, have been very, very generous. And that, yeah, it's a career worth like pursuing. And if you have organizations, that the sales organization that was built at the time, and even now, I mean, that just motivates people. Like, imagine that you're a graduate, you're 21 years old. By the time you hit 22, you're making 6 figures. That's amazing. So I was very, very proud of like the career progression that I was able to like enable. One thing that I said, because I'm all about projecting, I'd say we had like a sales kickoff. I'm like, dude, what my goal is, I want to create like the best. I want us to be the best sales organization in all of Europe. Like, I want us to be, and time and time again, so many awards and so many people have just like come up to me and they've just been like, the team is amazing. And I genuinely, like, I will fight tooth and nail. The best salespeople in the tech SaaS, like, during that time was definitely Cognism, like, for sure. And people use all, I have a mentor, and he said, someone said to me, where do I find good salespeople? He's like, Tog building on the 11th floor where Cognism is, that's like the best. So I'm really proud of that. And just like, I don't, so I'm just proud of like the people. The thing is, I wanted to say, about like the growth, but I think it sounds really bizarre, but I think it was inevitable. You just do the work. So it's all the other things that matter, that count, like the culture, the fun. Like, I'm so happy that I had so much fun. Like, it wasn't, I worked 18 hours a day. I had the best time of my life. I had like literally the best time of my life. I still have the best time of my life, but it wasn't all like hard play. And I have friends for life. So yeah.
So it sounds like the stuff you're most proud of is the things you couldn't quantify. So qualitative rather than quantitative are the bits that you're most proud of, which is nice, because obviously sales is inherently a quantity based, a volume based thing. But it's nice that it sounds like it's relationships and culture and career development for people that are in your team, which is really, really nice. You spoke about fun, which I know is why things came to an end for you. So talk to us about the coming to the end of that period and fun.
Well, COVID happened and there was a lot of intensity at work. I found it really difficult to emotionally regulate myself. I'm quite fiery. And I think in that whole COVID period where it was like everyone's at their desks and like you don't have that interaction, it just like sucked the life out of it. And it's like, I don't want to work. I don't want to work for the sake of just working. It has to be fun. Yeah.
So the personality was removed because of the COVID restrictions, and it sounds like it became more clinical and less sociable in terms of the environment.
It's not sociable, it's like the heart, right? It was like
the soul,
heart, yeah, in my day-to-day, which is important. Like, I do
interesting
with my soul.
No, I like how you place so much value on that and not just the figures, because for most people career choices have primarily been based on monetary or title based things, and it's quite nice that you kind of stay true to your values in terms of what you were motivated by. We talked about those internal motivations, one of them being fun, and it sounds like culture and sort of soul.
Yeah, but I would say fun isn't something that motivates me. It's definitely important, but I would say that just on that basis, like, the job title definitely was a motivator. Like, sales, that was motivated. VP CRO, there's a reason why I was very like title hungry, and I think the title is important. This is just my perception of matter. Like, it does count. That's just a reality. Like, the money also, like, I knew that if I put in the work, the money will come. And so I started off with a shit salary, but I knew that the outcome was going to be there, and it's going to be far greater than anyone else. And it has been. It's been like far greater than any other kind of trajectory. But it's because I gave my heart to it. and I really gave it 100%. And I would not have been able to get the financial outcome from the business if it was just like structured. So you have to think outside of just numbers, which I feel that I'm not short-sighted. I'm long-sighted. Like, I think that was also something important, because a lot of people, I want to have your trajectory. I want to, and people that were at Cognism after I left were like, if there's any opportunity, and I would send them opportunities, and they're like, no, it's like too much. Like, they're making 150 a year. They're like, no, I don't want. Not a lot of people are willing to take the risk, and that's just the reality. And I did not realize that to be the case. So, and even, I mean, we'll go on to talk about what I'm doing now, but even now, like, I'm just not short-sighted. I just know that it's going to come.
Okay, so that were, what was it? Was that 3 years? Did you say that chunk?
Yeah, 3.5, 4 years. 4 years, yeah.
Okay, so you decided to leave. How do you go from that, in terms of that, almost like an incubator of just growth, development, in success on every metric? How do you follow that?
Well, it's a great book, Michael Singer, called Surrender Experiment, and I read it probably a year before that happened. And the whole premise of the book is that to let go, and it follows this guy who's had this amazing career, and he hasn't really been much structured. He hasn't been structured. I think I got really into my head at the time. I was like, oh, I don't want to take this opportunity, because then I just need to commit, and I almost heightened everything too much. If I just taken the same approach as I did previously, which was recruitment, just take the job, tech company, just take the job, things just always tend to work out for me. And I didn't want to take a full-time job, because it's a big role as well, right? Like, being an exec in any SaaS role is a big commitment for the company and for me. And I knew that I wasn't 100% in it in any company that I was exploring. So then I have a friend who basically was starting this company called Sales Impact Academy, and he had about 200K in AR. And then I joined as like a fractional CRO. So I basically worked three days a week, and I helped build that to 2 million. I did it way faster than I did Cognism. Loved it, because first of all, the when you do it once, and you'll hear people say it to you, like, not in so many words, but subtly, they're like, I had people just say, not directly, but, oh yeah, but it's just like a one-trick pony, like, you've only done it once. So I think I wasn't up to prove it, but it just happened that I gained a lot of confidence in my ability to execute, because I've done it more than once. I also learned that I'm not even that. There's 20 people, I think, in the team. I can't even do 20 people. It was really hard for me. I really struggled with navigating so many different people, because I was so used to being the first employee in a company and just having visibility of everything, and just, that needs to be done, and then it's done. Either I do it, or whoever I sign it to it does it, and everyone has the same level of intensity. And it was not the case at all. Which is fine, because it's not my culture, it's not my business, right? With Cognism, James, the CEO, is based in Switzerland, right? So I was in the UK office. The UK office was the head office, so I had like a lot of autonomy and a lot of I got so used to everything is burning like to the ground. It needs to be solved. That when that energy wasn't brought in other organizations, I was like dumbfounded. Because and then it was like a bit more of a slow. They wanted it to be a slower pace. They wanted there to be a lot of focus on culture, whereas I'm very performance. Like, the culture comes afterwards. There's not going to be any, if you're not driving, if the performance comes before like culture, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, it's like when you're good at something, right? Like, how do you feel? How do you show up at work? How do you communicate? How does everyone feel about themselves? And so everyone's in their job to work and get better and do good and to perform. And we need to be driving the team towards that, rather than it just being like, when it's not performance, I feel that sometimes we can get very wishy-washy with like the cultural stuff. Not that that happened there, but I think I'm way more on the other end. I'm very like performance, like driven. So yeah, that was and then what happened was he wanted me to go full time, and I just couldn't do it, because I knew it wasn't the right fit for me. And then they hired a VP of sales, and then I stepped away.
So you were kind of in a period of trying to figure out, or try and find the right opportunity, the next opportunity, and you weren't going to invest yourself fully until you felt that it was the right opportunity for you.
Yeah, which wasn't really yeah, that was silly of me, I think. I also did, I was very lucky with Cognism because we had many opportunities to take out secondaries. And so there was, there was a big period between SIA and then the next role. And yeah, it was only because I was like fortunate enough to like take liquidity out, and not many people would have the same opportunity or have the opportunity or even like the approach, because I was thinking about this. Like everyone's aiming for this like number, and I'm just like, this is the only time that exists today. And so yeah, I've joked to my friends saying that I've taken, like, I just don't want to think about it, and I literally didn't. I just lived my life without a job for a very long time, and until I was like, right, I'm going mad now, and I need to find a job. And then the next role came knocking on my door.
And how long was that when you say like without having a job?
Years, a very long time.
And did you travel? Like what did you do?
Traveled. I mean, yeah, I've traveled so much. I've traveled the entire world. I don't know. I've just like lived and just like didn't care about anything other than just like enjoying myself and enjoying time with my family. And then there was another tech startup that I started working on for someone that I knew that it would work out. So there were like little projects that I was like working on, but nothing substantial, nothing that was like career, like, okay, I need to work or I need to, 100% focus.
But that's quite interesting that someone who is as intense and driven to take the time to live in the moment, and actually, because I was there this whisper in the back of your head of, I'm on a good career trajectory, should I just stick at it? Or
no, I think it's because I've just had my career trajectory has always been very different to like the standard, always has been. And so it was like, and I also I don't have a what do you when you I don't feel that it's just going to I want to say like limited mindset, more of like it's just going to like run out. Like I think there's plenty of like life still left, and I'm not going to go without. So I don't worry that it's all of a sudden like the tap's going to turn off. Like I don't have that limited like mindset that, oh, all of a sudden I'm not going to. Yeah, there's plenty. I have like an abundant mindset. That's it. I have an abundant.
So is it you've done it, and there you're like, well, I've got the proof, I can do it again?
No, more of I just don't want to do it. I just want to do this, and that's it. I think, yeah. So there was no part of me that was like, oh, I have to do this, because it wasn't like I never, when I became an SD, I was like, I want to be a CRO. I only wanted to become a CRO when I was like, okay, I think I'm good with this VP. Is it, what's the next thing for me? And what do I need to be? And that's it. I'm very 3-month stints, like literally I'm just 3-month stints. And for me, and it's so interesting because I saw a friend like last year, and he was saying, but it's so interesting, Nazma, because you could have just stayed and then worked and like continued. And it was such a baffling like thing for him to say, for me, because I just like the startup thing, but I forget that other people have like their different aspirations, but that it was never my aspiration. My aspiration is just being the best version of myself. Like genuinely, that's my aspiration. Like being like my role model in like 6 months' time. You know what, Matthew McConaughey, like speech and Oscar. That's genuinely what I want, rather than this kind of this job title. And yeah, it's just, and maybe I haven't always been like this, but it's certainly someone who I have been for the last few years.
I'm just Googling because there's a quote that that sums that up. It's what is it? It's something like, be the person today that you want to be 24 hours from now. So yeah,
thank you for be the person that will thank you tomorrow. I think something like that.
Yeah. Chris Williamson talks about it on his podcast, but I can't remember the exact quote. So how did you then come to decision on what followed that then? Because that sounds like an amazing few years. Like, what not brought that to an end, but what was the point where you said, right, my next block, my 3-month block of focus? How did you come to that?
I was like, I have a very bougie lifestyle, so yeah, it's like it's very hard to just. I wouldn't have too much left, so too much left. I basically just was not sustainable, and also I was feeling like I was going mad. So I was like, okay, right, I need to get some stability in my life, and I need to like find a role and just go all in. And I hadn't done that before, so this time I was like, okay, I'm going all in. The guy that I met years ago at a networking event in San Francisco, and so we always stayed in touch. And every time that he came to London, he was like, oh, let's go for dinner. And so and obviously COVID happened, so I hadn't spoken to him in years. So perhaps I might have met him like 4 years before then. Anyway, so he reached out. He's like, I've got a great opportunity. He was becoming CEO of a PE. Well, he was part of a PE firm, but he was moving over as CEO. And I just said to him straight away, I was like, I'm just not a PE girl. I'm like a startup. I know that this just isn't for me. Anyway, he said, it's like a startup, Nazma. Like we haven't really done mid-market before, and we really want to like penetrate it. We've done really good with enterprise, just explore the opportunity. Anyway, I explored the opportunity, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, new beginning. So I started, and I very quickly found out why I am not good at corporate organizations. I mean, first of all,
and why is that?
Everything's so slow, like painfully slow. And I know I'm intense, but even I was like, hey, it's fine. I really struggled with that. It was painfully slow. And so if you think about I've accelerated, like my career has been like accelerated. So there's of course going to be things that I've missed out, that I haven't really been able to nail as a professional, as an exec. And one of those things, and I'm going to admit it, is that I haven't mastered the art of like getting people, or like galvanized about like a project or something I'm doing, because I'm like, okay, well, this is the project, this is what we're going to do, and getting it done. That's it. That doesn't work in corporate. There's lots of different people that I have to like basically spend time with and educate. So that was a very big learning for me, that, when I went in and I just was talking about, the approach, that it was that was very interesting for other people, because I'm like, why is this the first time that we're hearing? I'm like, no, because we're going to do it. We launched it. What do you mean we launched this? We just get moving with this kind of stuff. So that was like a culture shock for that. It was definitely, I was a culture shock for them, for sure, because they were all very like traditional, I'd say like old school, like tech companies, like the larger ones, the SAPs, Cooper, those kind of tech companies, where I come from like a modern tech background. And I walk into I'm energy. And so I think there was definitely like a cultural mismatch. And cultural mismatch, I would have continued. I think I would have pushed myself. One thing I'm really good at is like quitting, I'd say. Stephen Bartlett says that I'm very good at quitting. I'm very good at quitting. I think out of my own ego, I would have, but like there was just too much, like, yeah, I just, it's the easiest way to describe it. It was just, I would not have lasted very long. And I'm also really like straight talking. It's just, it's worlds apart. Yeah, worlds apart for me. So
yeah, no, I when at my time at Admiral, arguably, I mean, they're only 30 odd years old, but even 30 odd years is enough for that company to be very, very slow. Like, you brief something into the studio and it'd be like, oh, a campaign 16 weeks, and I'm like, 16 weeks to deliver a campaign. I'm like, nah, that's 2 weeks worth of work. Come on. And I couldn't have. I definitely couldn't survive in a big corporate.
yeah.
the pace is just too slow.
But the thing that I would say is, one thing I am like proud of is, like, in the first month, like, we've got my SDRs, got 2 SDRs. I mean, they absolutely killed it. But they were literally calling off spreadsheets and mobile, a spreadsheet, Excel, and mobile, because the thing is, I wasn't going to fail. And obviously, like, these things take time because they have like different processes and buying tech and then like integrating it. So that's just the way it is. I understood that, and that was fine. And I still pushed through, and I still performed, and I knew that I was able to execute. There's no question, but it's like it would have. There was just too much adjustment for me that I don't think, and then I felt that I couldn't be, and because of the amount of adjustment, that I can't be authentically myself. So I'll never perform right when I'm not myself.
Now, before we jump into the sort of roundup quickfire questions, tell us about what you're doing now, because that's, you're still there, you're still learning, but what is it? We haven't touched on it. Those watching or listening are probably very curious to understand what is ticking the boxes for you now in terms of all of these traits and value things that we've been speaking about the last 90 minutes. So what are you doing?
So, co-founder, B2B influencer marketing company called Flooencer. So, funnily enough, CEO founder is my first SDR at Cognism, Hector Forward. And so it's like full 360. And we're just having so much fun together. What we do is we help connect brands with thought leaders, subject matter experts, and connect with them all through like sponsored content on LinkedIn, YouTube, and helping drive like ROI through while partnering with those who already have an engaged authority, basically.
So is it kind of like a marketplace, a platform where you can find people, connect with people, or?
So we're building out the tech at the moment. What we are predominantly is like we're running as an agency. And so the way that tech SaaS works is they all say like do things at scale. And so we've basically understood the entire process. We work with more than like 50 brands like today, and we really intimately understand that process, and we're building tech to help enable the brands and the influencers on our platform. But outside of that, we actually execute the campaigns end to end.
Interesting. Okay, and then I guess you take are you representing these influencers, as in you take a management fee from the influencers, or?
No, we don't. We basically have a relationship with the brand. We don't charge anything to the influencers, and so they pay us a subscription. That's kind of like, I'm still a SaaS girl, and then they pay us like a subscription, and then they give us a budget. They assign us a budget, and then we basically distribute that across.
And then you make that work with the community of freelancers and influencers and stuff that you have.
Yeah. We do a lot of sourcing, right? So if, for example, we have cybersecurity and somebody's running a campaign, a lot of the times we do the custom sourcing because it's very specific. We look at content. There's a lot of work that goes into ensure that it's the right match. So it lands, it's all organic, it's authentic, because nobody likes being sold to. Right.
Well, it's very, very interesting. I look forward to catching up in 12 months, 24 months time to dig deeper like we have done for the rest of your career. But to round up then, we'll do some quick fire questions. So for anyone listening or watching, what would you say are your top 3 tips for career progression?
One, like focus on today, like to be really be focused on being like really excellent at today. And then somehow you need to balance like understanding like what the next step is, and also like learning those like skills, those qualities, not necessarily like the job, but the person that you need to be. And then the third, I'd say, is my favorite quote, which is, nobody cares, just work fucking harder. So sorry for that word, but
that's good. So
everyone
laser focus.
Yeah,
I think that's a very good summary of everything we've spoken about. So laser focus on what's right in front of you, the challenge is right in front of you. Do the work, or do the job that you want. Whether if that's the next job, fine. Sometimes you've got to just. This has come up quite a few conversations. You've got to do stuff that's kind of out of your job description a lot if you want to progress. And then the next one, no one cares, just fucking do it, which is a nice one, which speaks to the work ethic. And I think that's a good reality check for some of the generation nowadays who expect really high salaries without the work ethic to go with it, unfortunately. I think I know the answer to this because you've touched on it already. Any regrets from your career today?
Well, not really. I guess the only thing is, I think when people ask that question about regrets, I guess it's because you also want to, as like a viewer, you want to be thinking about, okay, like what can I avoid? And I would just say, just quit, like just quit faster. When you know something's not right for you, just quit. Like you don't ever regret the things that you do, or only ever regret the things that you don't do in life.
Yeah, there is you mentioned Stephen Barlow, I think it's in his book of 33 Laws of Business and Life, or whatever it's called. I think it's the quit fast and quit often or something. It's like, if something's not working, why would you, it's that whole definition of madness, is doing the same thing and over again, expecting different results. Like if you've tried it 3 times and it's still not working, just quit and move on to the next thing. Because you could be slowing down finding the right thing for you, or delaying. Yeah, so that's a very, very good one. We've touched on obviously your current role and current goals, but what would be next? You said you always have this like mind of where you want to go next. So what is the next thing?
Next thing I'd say right now is for us to hit the 1 million mark in revenue. So that's what we're aiming for.
Which would be a very nice, it's just a nice number, isn't it, to hit that?
Yeah, just a nice rounded number, and it's the next milestone. And I think it's really important for everyone to have, a next goal in place.
And again, I think I know the answer to this based on your internal motivators. But do you have an end goal? Is there a top of a mountain that you're trying to reach, or is it just, you've said about it, like just be the best version of yourself? Is it just this continuous cycle?
It's a continuous cycle. Like there's no like end goal. Like there's no, and I also do think that I just live my life like I have everything. One of the guys that works for me now, he said to me, he's like, Nazma, you do great at Ashley stuff. I used to always think, well, look, like, of course you're going to say you're a CRO. And he's like, now I think to myself, and then I thought to myself, he's saying to recently, he's like, well, what was I like before then? Like, I was thinking like this even before this. So I always have this like abundant mindset that I am everything that I need. And there's just nothing, there's no end in sight. It's just like enjoying life. Is just, you need to like live every single day, work hard and enjoy it.
I think it makes me think of something my gran always said. She was I don't know, like 85 at the time, and she was like, you can't spend money when you're 85. She was like, I've paid my heating bill, I've got food, like what else can I? She wasn't buying clothes and shoes and holidays, she's too old. So she was like, enjoy it, like whilst you've got it, enjoy it. And I think that's a very, very nice message to finish on.
I think just on that though,
yeah, go on.
That's a really big like learning that lesson that because I've had this mindset. Obviously, a lot of my friends, my family are just like, Nazma, like this is ridiculous. And I remember when I took this time off, like when I just make a joke about it, I say it was early retirement. And then I went to Tokyo, and I was in Tokyo, and I remember because you have to walk everywhere, and I saw all these people that were retired, that were like American or British, and they were struggling. You have to walk everywhere, and they were really struggling to enjoy themselves and to just like actually enjoy the fruits of their labor. And I just remember thinking, thank fuck I did it this way, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed for anybody, right? And so there's a really good book called like Die With Nothing. I recommend everyone reading it. But yeah, it's like, what are you waiting for? Just enjoy your life today.
There's quite a few good book recommendations. I think there's like 4 or 5 you've given, so that's
so
always
many
good
recommendations. I'm like, yeah, I'm avid book reader. But yeah, sorry.
All right, one final bonus question then. Favorite book, self-development wise? Or a top 3 if it's too challenging.
That is really, 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 really challenging, because every book has like different learnings, and like they can,
Which spoke to you most, though? Which was the most profound in terms of like when you put it down?
Yeah, I'd say How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think is like just
Okay.
it was written in 1936, and even today, everyone can resonate with it. And yeah, it's just hard, and we're also different, so we read the same book and from a different perspective, right, based on your age and your experience. So yeah, it's hard.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
I believe that's our longest ever episode, and I think it was. I'm glad. No, I'm glad we took the extra time, because there's some really really good advice, stories that I wasn't expecting in terms of like your internal motivators and the honesty of why you left and what works for you and what doesn't. So I think that was really really good. So thank you for joining me, and for those watching or listening, I think this is going to be. We're about halfway through season 2 in terms of recording. So there's a few more episodes left. So we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Jamie.